Ceann Corley. I welcome the publication of the bill. I do feel it's long overdue and urgently required. Our existing laws on gambling are hopelessly outdated and have created a situation where a significant cohort of our citizens are exposed to serious risk and hardship as a consequence of uncontrolled online gambling. It is said that you can judge a society by the way that it treats its weakest and most vulnerable citizens. In that cohort, I would include people who suffer a gambling addiction and whose lives are blighted by chasing losses and hoping for wins. However, gambling addiction touches more than the addict caught in its grasp. It impacts widely on families, partners, children, the workplace and community groups. Sadly, our state has been dragging its feet in introducing this new legislation, and the limited enforcement of the existing limited legislation on gambling has done little to protect people who struggle with gambling addiction. Instead, it has allowed a vulnerable sector of our society to fall prey to the increasing reach of highly sophisticated gambling companies. The rapid growth in online gambling through the internet and apps means that all of us have access to highly addictive games and formats at our fingertips. These online formats are run by highly sophisticated companies who are top of their game in terms of the operation and manipulation of players to bring them more and more into highly addictive gambling. For instance, a player might go on a website to place bets on a race, a match, or even lottery numbers, and then be enticed by free bets into making a punt on a casino game, slots, a virtual race or the like. In 2017, the Department of Justice estimated that the market for gambling in Ireland would be upwards of 8 billion per annum. At the time, most of their estimate was based on betting receipts, which were estimated by the betting tax receipts at 5.22 billion, with the National Lottery contributing an extra 800 million. However, there were no figures provided by the Department for revenues for online gaming, which some have estimated could match the betting revenues. The figures from the UK provide a frightening backdrop to our discussion here today, Minister. According to the House of Lords report, 60% of the gambling industry's profits have come from 5% of their customers. It is actually amazing the type of things that can be gambled on. And as bookmakers seek to increase their profits, the number of betting markets available during sporting events is increasing all the time. For example, during the England versus Senegal soccer game on Sunday night, I took a look at one of the prominent bookmakers' websites. I could back the result, the exact score, how many total goals there would be, which individual players would score, which players would provide an assist, whether both teams would score or not, the number of shots a certain player would target, if any player would have a shot on target in both halves, the number of corner kicks in the game, the number of yellow or red cards, which players would be shown a yellow or red card, which player would foul, and how many fouls they would give away. These type of markets are designed to keep as many customers as possible engaged and actively gambling all the way through the game. In addition to this sports betting, we also see many different markets where bets can be placed on politics or other non-sporting competitions. In 4 of the past 5 years, British punters have lost more than 14 billion per annum in online casino games, sporting betting and other forms of gambling. And it has been estimated that gambling addiction is responsible for over 8% of all suicides in the UK. The most notable shift in the UK, which I have no doubt is mirrored here, is that remote gambling is now the dominant form of gambling in the UK. On the basis of the UK figures from the Gambling Commission, it's not unreasonable to assume that online casinos here in Ireland account for close to 3 billion per annum, if not more. The pace at which the legislation is processed, the level of resources allocated to implementation of the legislation, and critically, the extent of which we enforce the existing gambling legislation will tell us much about how seriously the government and us all will take this issue. I welcome the establishment of the Gambling Regulatory Authority and the appointment recently of the CEO designate, Anne-Marie Caulfield. I wish her well in her role. Ms Caulfield and her new team will have their work cut out for them, and I hope that the new entity will be properly resourced and funded. The new regulatory authority will have responsibility for regulating global gambling companies, with years of experience in managing regulations and regulators across a range of jurisdictions. Ms Caulfield will need to have her wits about her when dealing with these companies, and will need access to the highest level of international expertise to ensure that the regulatory structure here can be effective and challenging for the gambling industry. I don't mean any disrespect to the new authority, but it needs to be clear that these gambling entities will know at first hand how to play the regulator. Over the course of the last 2 years, I have become acutely aware of the impact of online gambling, or online gaming in particular, on individuals who have been sucked into a spiral of addiction with entities that are expert at extracting money from them. I sought to get clarity from the government as to the licence status of these entities, to see if there was any way that there could be controls exercised over them. The practices that have been employed are disgusting. Free bets, free games, email marketing to people whose profile of play is concerning. I have no doubt that the statistic of 60% of profits coming from 5% of the player applies here also. Their companies know who to target and how to get them. When I inquired about the powers to regulate e-gaming companies in Ireland, I was advised in a reply to a PQ from the Minister of Finance that there is no provision for the licensing of e-gaming or online gaming in Ireland. In other words, the provision of online gaming, whether through online casinos, slots, virtual horse races, etc., is entirely illegal and in breach of our gaming and lotteries legislation. The current law in this area is the Gaming and Lotteries Act 1956. The Act, while outdated, is very clear on what is covered by the Act and what is not. Any gaming that is not permitted under the 1956 is defined in Section 4, brackets 2 of the Act as unlawful gaming. If the Act of 1956 does not include the provision of games and lotteries by remote means, as both Minister Donoghue and Minister Brown contend, then that gaming is unlawful under the 1956 Act, and any person promoting or assisting in promoting or providing facilities of any kind of gaming is liable to criminal prosecution under Section 44 of the Act. It would be very helpful to hear the Minister on this issue in his reply. And let's be clear about what I am alleging, so as that no one is muddled. I am not contending that gambling or e-gambling is illegal. The contention is that e-gaming is illegal in Ireland under our current laws. Online gambling involving online casinos, online FOBTs, fixed odds betting terminals, are not licensed or licensable in Ireland, and yet are being offered to Irish consumers on a host of online sites, some of which are operated by entities that hold betting or remote betting licences, which only authorise them to engage in gambling rather than gaming. Equally, the fact that the government is taking tax from the illegal offerings, and the Department of Justice appears to be offering certificates of fitness to remote betting companies so that they can obtain a betting licence, who are clearly and manifestly breaking Irish law by offering illegal e-gaming services to Irish punters, does not appear to have registered as an issue, but is one of great significance. Imagine the uproar, as I've already said on the floor of this House, if it was discovered that revenue was collecting VAT on sales from heroin, cocaine or prostitution. Yet, in the criminal law, the position is no different. It's also important to recognise that there are, of course, people who get enjoyment out of placing wagers on events and backing their opinion in a sensible and disciplined way. Gambling legislation must continue to make it possible for people to enjoy a sensible wager, but also designed in such a way as to provide as much protection to problem gamblers in the state as we can reasonably do. Like my colleagues before me, I will be putting down amendments, But I do hope that this legislation will be a priority. Given the impact of unrestricted gambling activity on vulnerable citizens and their families, I believe that it's imperative that the existing law is enforced by the entities charged and funded with that responsibility currently. Thank you, Count Corley.